the relatively unpublicised sport of karting. But the link with Formula One is very strong. Many of today's top drivers, like Mansell and Senna, dicing here down the finishing straight of the Spanish Grand Prix, started their careers as karters.
Down into second gear, and Mansell, if he gets it right, can sprint out of the rear wing of Senna's car. Senna moves across. He's keeping Mansell back, and he wins. Mansell won't like that any more than he likes at Brazil.
They developed their skills early on at meetings of small clubs like this one at Shennington in the Midlands, the club where Nigel Mansell raced for many years before going on to bigger things. Several hundred machines will come here from all over Britain for a racing day like this. The karts were actually developed back in the 50s in the States, where they were used, strangely enough, as cheap transport for mechanics in the pits in Indianapolis. Now, 30-odd years on, they're still very simple. You've got a tubular steel frame onto which all the components are bolted. You can tweak to some extent the stiffness of that frame and the stiffness of the rear axle, and you can manoeuvre the wheels laterally and backwards and forwards in order to cope with different conditions and different tracks. You've got a 100cc engine, straight drive, no gearbox, straight drive through to the wheels, rev fearsomely at something like 17,000, 18,000 revs, which is one of the reasons why this sport is so noisy. Petrol tank carries about a gallon of normal 4-star petrol after most races. You've got an accelerator and a brake, and really that's about it. Because there's no gearbox, starting is a matter of pushing the kart and then jumping on, or being pushed by helpers. And then they're off. With no gearbox or clutch, the line of the kart through the corner is controlled as much through the throttle and the brake as through the steering wheel. But the karts are immensely manoeuvrable. They can scream round a tight 180-degree bend almost flat out.
If you're a hairy driver, you go into the corner full speed, slam on the brakes and just hope you get coming round. Then if you're a smooth driver, what you'll usually do is like take it wide and then cut in and then go back on yourself, because that's usually for a hairpin. And you must remember to keep the revs up. So instead of slamming on the brakes, you just flip it and then touch the brake.
On the straight, they get up to 80 miles an hour, even those karts driven by the youngest drivers. On the whole, it's one of the safest forms of motorsport, but at those speeds, things can go wrong and you get the odd spill. One of the reasons why this sport is so popular, of course, is because you can get into it at such an early age. The first category, in fact, is for 10 to 13-year-olds, racing on karts with restricted power for a championship known as the Junior Cadet Championship. They move up into another class for 13 to 16-year-olds, and from then on it's really open house, with drivers ranging from 16 to 60-year-olds, I'm told, on karts with engine sizes ranging from 100 cc's up to 250 cc's.
Well, my mum's very interested in it. She really enjoys motor racing. So she's really the team manager, and she makes sure the entries are sent in and everything's going fine. And if we have to keep changing the tyres, if it's a funny day, she always helps us do that. And if there's emergency, Mum will come and help as well. My dad's really the chief mechanic. So he's always telling us what to do and make sure the engines are running okay. And my brother and I are just the drivers, but my brother does a lot in the garage as well. He works a lot at home.
So what does it cost to get into this sport? Well, you can pick up a second-hand kart for around £200. Set of leathers and a helmet costs perhaps another £100. If you take it very seriously, as many people do, then it can cost you 4 or 5 times that. This kart, for example, is worth about £1,500. The engine alone, £750. Change the bearings after 3 hours running, another £100. So it can be a pretty expensive sport.
Well, you have to include your running costs to and from the track, a suitable vehicle to put the kart in, 2 or 3 sets of tyres a year, and engine rebuilds. Probably work out around £80 or £90 for a club meeting, and a meeting like this, drivers are pushing in £300 or £400 for the meeting.
Now, one of the youngest drivers in this country is a young boy called Simon Spencer, whose 10th birthday coincided with the start of this particular season.
Well, my dad took me along to a race meeting, and I watched a couple of races, and I asked my dad if I could start karting, and he said yes. Well, my first ambition is to win the British Championships, and when I'm old enough to race around Europe as well as in this country. And then eventually I'd like to become a Formula One driver like Nigel Mansell.
It may not look very much like Formula One racing here at Shennington on a Sunday afternoon. But that's where many of these people are in their imaginations, where one or two could even end up.
And while we're on the Grand Prix, the distinctive black and yellow cars of the Renault equipe no longer appear, unfortunately, on the Grand Prix circuit. But of course, Renault remain a major force in the European car market. They've had a big success over the past 2 years with the Renault 25, and this year they're launching a replacement for the somewhat long in the tooth Renault 18 range.